while utilizing funds from the reconciliation to support pay for personnel. Our work on FY26 still remains unfinished. I know there's a lot of ideas on how best to fund the department for the remainder of this year and next, but I would be remiss that if I did not express my opposition to the approach that abandons the funding for the department annually. The work we do on this committee is critical to national security, but no two fiscal years are alike, and challenges that the agencies face are always evolving, limiting our ability to respond and demonstrate oversight over federal funding for the department on an annual basis not only abandons our Article 1 obligations, but it will be irresponsible to the taxpayer. The collective budget for these three agencies before us this morning make over almost half of the department's discretionary funding. Their underlying missions are at the heart of immigration policy, a debate that Congress has wrestled for over several decades. These policies that impact lives, our economy, and our community at large, they're important, what we do up here in Washington. As a member from a border state, and actually I live just about a mile away from the border, we know that these three agencies play a very important role in my backyard and a critical role in, to the constituents in everyday lives. The border is not just a place that I visit, but it is a home. The men and women of CBP, ICE, USCIS are my neighbors. And as a ranking member, I recognize the toughest parts of this bill rest in finding an agreement on how best to address the funding and adjacent policy changes across CBP, ICE, and USCIS. Earlier this year, when 2 American citizens were killed during the federal immigration enforcement operations in Minnesota, it brought many questions to the forefront for the American people. Not only how this happened, but what comes next? What comes next? And at that time, I demanded an independent investigation to be done into this event, but it remains unclear what, if any, progress has been made on this front. I don't think it's possible for us to recognize that these events are the reason why FY 2026 DHS bill remains unfinished. Again, absent a final bill for FY 2026, we also must recognize the funding windfall for CBP, ICE, USCIS, received during the reconciliation through both direct funding and fee adjustments. I suspect we will have many questions about how this funding, specifically the $75 billion appropriated for ICE, how that's been executed. I also think it's important that we recognize who did not benefit from reconciliation, such as the men and women Homeland Security Investigation, HSI, within ICE. The role that they play in criminal investigations and fighting drug trafficking, human child pornographers, and all that is critical to our national security. Moving on, when we talk about border, we must focus on immigration and security. There's no doubt that it's important, but we often forget about how important the border is to our economy and our livelihoods. Trying to find the balance between security, trade, and tourism is important, especially to our border communities. So I look forward to talking about some of these issues that we're seeing at the ports of entry, checkpoints that we're seeing. And finally, USCIS, I hope we're able to discuss the utility of this new law enforcement arm that involves hiring, training, maintaining 200 new law enforcement, something that USCIS has never done before, and how this would not be duplicative of the work that ICE is doing already. There is a lot of things that we need to cover today. I want to thank the witnesses for being here. Look forward to, I think I've talked to most of y'all, and look forward to spending a little bit of time after this committee. So with that, I want to say to all the three witnesses, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you so much for holding this meeting.
Thank you to the gentleman from Texas. The gentlelady from Connecticut is recognized for her opening statement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member Cuellar. And I want to welcome our witnesses this morning and thank you for being here. I want to begin by noting the absurdity of holding a hearing on funding for these agencies when Republican leadership has openly decided to pursue a partisan funding process outside of the Appropriations Committee. Slush funding the government through a series of partisan budget bills that are written in back rooms by Republican leadership driven only by political interest is a recipe for
Will the
catastrophe.
gentlelady suspend?
I will.
We're getting mood music somewhere. Okay, the floor is yours again.
Thank you. Thank you. We're going to repeat that. Slush funding the government through a series of bipartisan budget bills that are written in back rooms by Republican leadership driven only by political interest is a recipe for catastrophe. My colleagues across the aisle have loudly hailed the work that we were able to accomplish in passing 11 of the 12 appropriations bills. They are right to do so. It is important, and yes, it is difficult work of governing. That's what governing is about. But the very fact that it is difficult ensures that it will endure. Abandoning the appropriations process in favor of partisan reconciliation bills will come back to haunt this institution. If we go down this road, there is a cliff at the end, and I strongly encourage my colleagues not to do this. The most direct reason that the entire Department of Homeland Security is still shut down after more than 60 days is because Republican leadership refused to pass the bill that the United States Senate unanimously passed twice. They agreed to this. We have the Congress, both House and Senate. You get unanimous consent. We can't get unanimous consent to say that the sky is blue, but you had twice vote in the Senate on unanimous consent basis. And they have passed it twice. It is now still being blocked. They're blocking this bill because they will not allow any funding for the Department of Homeland Security to move forward unless it also includes funding for ICE and CBP, without any new protections against the misconduct that the American people are demanding. They are demanding these protections. These agencies are in dire need of serious reform to build back public trust that has been lost. We all have seen the footage of the brutal and senseless killings of Renee Nicole Good and Alex Preddy. We have seen our cities terrorized, communities afraid and terrorized by ICE and CBP. 44 detainees have died in ICE custody since President Trump took office, including 25 in this fiscal year alone. That is a 20-year high for an agency that was only formed in 2003. In January of this year, ICE violated nearly 100 federal court orders, which the chief federal judge in the state of Minnesota estimated was more violations than some federal agencies have committed during their entire existence. Law enforcement in Minnesota is investigating 2 ICE officers for kidnapping, false imprisonment after they kicked in the door of an American citizen without a warrant, forced him outside at gunpoint, threw him in the back of their car, and then drove him around until they realized they had nothing to charge him with. ICE officers in Minnesota tear-gassed a family on their way home from a basketball game, which caused their 6-month-old daughter's heart to stop beating before she was rushed to the hospital. A detention officer in an ICE facility recently pleaded guilty to sexually abusing a detainee over the course of several months in 2025. There was an ongoing investigation into 2 immigration officers for potentially lying under oath after they shot a Venezuelan man in the leg. A Cuban man died by homicide due to excessive force at a ICE-run facility in El Paso. I could go on, but I trust I've made my point. It is abundantly clear that significant reforms are needed. I have been very clear on my own position. We need border security. I do not favor abolishing ICE, but significant reforms are needed. This is the United States of America. Officers should be required to get a warrant from a judge before they kick in someone's door. Agents should not be able to hide their faces and conceal their identities from the public to evade accountability for misconduct. American citizens should not be detained and deported. And when there are cases of misconduct, There should be mandatory independent investigations. I understand that reforming these agencies will be the product of lengthy negotiations. I understand that negotiating is hard work. I understand that it can be tempting to just give up, to try to go it alone. But I promise you, that is not a sustainable or responsible way to govern. I encourage Republican leadership, stop blocking the bill that passed the Senate unanimously twice so we can fund the vast majority of the Department of Homeland Security, FEMA, TSA, Coast Guard, cybersecurity, Secret Service, and while we continue to negotiate with regard to ICE. I encourage my Republican colleagues to join us in the difficult work of forging agreements rather than abandoning the process in favor of a strictly bipartisan path. I thank the chair and ranking member, and I yield back.
Without objection, the witness's full written testimony will be entered into the record. With that in mind, we would ask you to please summarize your opening statements in 5 minutes. Mr. Scott, the floor is yours.
Chairman Amade, Ranking Member Cuellar, members of the committee, thank you very much for the opportunity to appear here before you today to discuss the President's Fiscal Year 2027 budget for U.S. Customs and Border Protection. As America's unified border agency, CBP is responsible for knowing and controlling everything and everyone that crosses our international borders. CBP serves Americans every day by keeping bad things and bad people out of our homeland and for protecting our international supply chains to empower our economy. I'm incredibly proud to represent more than 68,000 dedicated men and women of CBP who continue to perform this vital mission every day, even though they can't count on even being paid right now. It's bewildering to me that we are here today discussing a budget for 2027 when Congress has yet to enact a budget for 2026. 7 months into the fiscal year, CBP has been shut down more than we've been open. One obvious impact of this funding lapse is the thousands of personnel that have gone without pay for extended periods of time. And until Congress acts, I can't even promise them when they're going to get their next paycheck. But the damage goes beyond the missing wages, and it cannot be fixed by merely doing a back pay restoration. Today, many of the services or the service providers that we use have not been paid. In plain terms, that means aircraft, patrol boats, patrol vehicles that need service, they're being parked. Border surveillance equipment that requires maintenance is offline until funding is appropriated. Our confidential human sources are not being paid, and we're at risk of losing some of our intelligence tools that help us secure the border. As World Cup approaches, CBP is unable to provide our personnel the advanced training that we had planned for this event. The negative impacts are not limited to border security. Many of our contractors are small family-run businesses, and now they face the prospect of laying off their employees or going out of business because we can't pay them as we had promised. The problems will compound until this body takes action and funds DHS. I've talked about some of the bad stuff, our current challenges. Let me talk about some of the amazing things that we've done over the last year. Because of President Trump's leadership and the support from Congress through the Working Families Tax Cut Act and the commitment of our personnel, CBP has fundamentally transformed the border, and we have shut down or we have stopped the open borders of the past. As a result, illegal entries between the ports of entry are at record lows, and we have reclaimed control of our borders. The President's budget is designed to build on that progress. It prioritizes critical investments in our personnel, advances in technology, additional assets, and it strengthens our frontline operations, including our counter-narcotics efforts. Our adversaries, though, are increasingly using sophisticated methods like drones to coordinate smuggling of dangerous contraband into the U.S. Our budget provides critical funding for counter-unmanned aircraft systems to detect and mitigate these drone threats. It also invests in vital port hardening measures and the modernization of our labs so that we can trace fentanyl and we can do scientific analysis of other contraband. CBP's Automated Commercial Environment, or ACE, is the backbone of U.S. import and export processing. This budget invests in upgrading ACE to significantly improve efficiency, transparency, and enforcement. CBP's workforce, though, is our greatest strength. Building on a year of substantial advances in recruitment and hiring, the President's budget reinforces our commitment to attracting the most qualified candidates we can for CBP. The budget sustains our workforce care programs so that we can take care of the personnel that are under immense pressure in the demands of their job. In closing, the President's fiscal 2027 budget clearly recognizes the challenges confronting CBP in our nation, and it provides the resources we need to address them. It builds on historic investments, allowing CBP to enhance vital operations and pursue new initiatives that support the safety of this great nation. However, the impacts of the continued DHS shutdown are real, and they're compounding. The longer this continues, the more those impacts will cascade across our operations, our workforce, and the American public. Despite these challenges, CBP will never forget that we were formed out of the ashes of 9/11, and we remain steadfast in our commitment to secure the borders of the United States. I implore Congress to do the same, pass the Senate DHS funding bill, and work expeditiously to enact a second reconciliation measure by June 1st and provide CBP and ICE the funding that we desperately need. Thank you for your continued support of our mission and our personnel, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Mr. Lyons, the floor is yours for your opening statement.
Thank you, sir. Good morning. Chairman Amade, Ranking Member Cuellar, and distinguished members of the committee. I want to thank you for the opportunity to testify today and to discuss the vital work of ICE, as well as the importance of sustained funding for our agency. I am deeply proud to stand alongside the dedicated men and women of ICE who work tirelessly every day to enforce our nation's immigration laws and safeguard our communities. Our officers and agents are being villainized for simply upholding and enforcing law. But the bottom line is that they risk their lives every day to serve our nation and protect our families, friends, and neighbors. In recognition of their service and sacrifice, one of my top priorities is to ensure that ICE operates efficiently. I can do that by working with you to ensure we have the resources we need to keep our workforce safe, keep the promises made by President Trump, and meet our obligations to the American people. The ICE workforce is depending on you and I to secure those resources. ICE is at a pivotal moment. The Working Families Tax Cut Act has fundamentally transformed our agency's approach to immigration enforcement. This historic bill enabled ICE to hire 1,000 new personnel, expand our detention and removal capabilities, and invest in the tools necessary to meet the administration's ambitious goals. These upfront, large-scale investments allow us to surge our operations today and lay the groundwork for more efficient and effective processes in the future. While this funding is transformational, it's not a substitute for annual appropriations. The limitations Congress placed on these funds preclude ICE from using reconciliation funding for basic needs, such as paying non-law enforcement personnel, operating basic services within ICE, and conducting criminal investigations into human trafficking, child exploitation, and more. Therefore, the annual budget process remains critical to sustaining ICE base operations and ensuring we meet the emerging challenges the reconciliation funding does not authorize us to do. Under President Trump's administration, we've significantly increased our operational tempo. Since January 20th, we've arrested nearly 457,000 aliens, including 281,000 aliens with criminal histories, 8,400 suspected gang members, and over 1,600 known and suspected terrorists. We've removed roughly 570 individuals. This result is because of your support with annual appropriations combined with the surge capabilities afforded by the Working Families Tax Cut Act. Therefore, to achieve the President's objectives, we request your support for the $5.4 billion for enforcement removal operations in the FY27 budget. As we expand our operations, we remain steadfast in our commitment to detainee safety and well-being. ICE ensures all individuals in our custody are housed in safe, secure, and humane conditions. Our Office of Professional Responsibility conducts regular compliance inspections and oversight to ensure that our facilities meet the highest standards and that we remain fully compliant with our legal and policy requirements. This oversight is funded through the annual appropriations process, not the big, beautiful bill. In FY25, Homeland Security Investigations has conducted more than 4,800 arrests related to child exploitation and rescued nearly 1,500 child victims from ongoing sexual abuse. They've also dismantled more than 2,400 human smuggling operations, including 3,100 convictions. The FY27 budget will provide $2.6 billion to continue HSI's critical investigations. Equally important is the training and professionalism of our workforce. Officer training is and always will be the utmost important to ICE. We have implemented rigorous training programs to focus on our use of force, de-escalation, and detainee care. Our officers and agents are well-trained, well-equipped, and deeply committed to carry out their duties with integrity and respect of the law. Our attorneys are also working around the clock to preserve the rule of law. In FY25, ICE attorneys represented DHS in more than 2 million removal hearings. They've managed more than 1,900 human rights violation cases and over 4,000 national security cases nationwide. The FY27 budget includes $8.7 million to address the workload administrative needs. ICE is also looking for $1.6 billion for our mission support staff. These dedicated professionals maintain our infrastructure, ensure our workforce has the support they need, and are stewards of all ICE resources. In closing, I'm sitting before you today asking for your support for our FY27 budget. The combined resources provided in the Working Family Tax Cut Act and our annual appropriations are essential to ensuring ICE is capable of executing its critical mission both now and the future. Again, thank you for allowing me this time to speak with you today. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Edlow. The floor is yours for your opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Amadei, Ranking Member Cuellar, and members of the subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss the fiscal year 2027 budget request for U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. I am honored to represent the dedicated men and women of USCIS and appreciate your partnership as we work to protect American citizens, uphold the rule of law, and safeguard our homeland. Under President Trump's leadership, USCIS has made historic progress in restoring accountability and security to our legal immigration system. Excuse me. Over the past year, we have focused on combating fraud, ending exploitation of immigration programs, upholding the integrity of the naturalization process, and protecting American communities and workers. I'm thrilled to continue this work with Secretary Mullen at the helm of the department now. USCIS's fiscal health is strong. In fiscal year 2025, we collected $7.5 billion in fee revenue, exceeding forecasts, and our carryover balance is well above targeted levels. We continue to manage resources responsibly, ensuring uninterrupted operations and supporting mission-critical programs. A key component of these efforts is E-Verify, which helps employers nationwide confirm work eligibility and support national security. E-Verify has more than 1.4 million employers enrolled, and nearly 44 million cases were run through the system last year alone. In fiscal year 2025, it prevented fraudulent use of over 10,000 Social Security numbers and issued 25,000 not employed authorized confirmations. Employer satisfaction remains high, and we are requesting $113 million to maintain and enhance this essential system. We have also implemented the Working Families Tax Cut Act, signed into law by President Trump in July 2025. This legislation introduced new fees and provisions to strengthen the integrity of our legal immigration system. Through its implementation, USCIS has closed loopholes, limited improper fee waivers, and reinforced accountability. In closing, our commitment to integrity, security, and service remains unwavering. But I would be remiss if I did not mention that as the longest shutdown in history continues, USCIS strongly asked the House to pass the Senate DHS funding bill and work expeditiously to enact a second reconciliation measure by June 1st to provide sustained funding to our partners at ICE and CBP. We are dedicated to deterring and disrupting fraud, optimizing resources, and strictly adhering to immigration law. I thank the committee for its attention to our mission and for its ongoing support of USCIS. On a personal note, I want to thank Mr. Chairman, you for your work and your support to the nation and to USCIS, and congratulate you on your upcoming retirement. I welcome your questions and look forward to continued collaboration.
Thank you, Mr. Edlow. Let me translate that. You guys are happier than hell to see me in the rearview mirror. But at this point, I don't have any feelings or any pride left, so can't do anything to me, huh? I'm going to turn to Mr. Cuellar for his questioning initially, but I do want to put this little footnote in since I'm sure there are other people watching. I know the OMB language where people who are the agencies most directly affected saying, please pass a bill that has a zero in front of your agency, and pass a reconciliation bill which has no oversight reforms for the lessons that we've learned from the last one is phenomenally interesting from my part. Not personally directed at any of you, but I hope somebody's, listening on the interweb or whatever the heck you new people call that stuff. Mr. Cuellar, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Scott, first of all, thank you for your service and your men and women that work for y'all. I have a couple questions dealing with the border wall. Back under what I call Trump 1, I was able to get about 6 exceptions down there for a border wall. Now, I'm also suggesting that we add certain exceptions to the Laredo area, to the Zapata area, and to Big Bend. I understand that y'all put a pause on, but there are certain areas that are very sensitive, and by that I'm talking about, we do know that the numbers went down, and congratulations, 96% gone down. Laredo before that was the second lowest crossing that we had during those high numbers. So the numbers went down, and all of that happened without a single foot of border wall or even a buoy. It was policy, repercussions at the border that helped, and working with our partners. Now that we're looking at $46.5 billion of border wall money, I do have certain concerns. First of all, the waivers that we're saying last year, they use Biden era migration stats for their justification, not current ones, but past numbers. I disagree. I did not approve of open borders. I was very strong against it. Now my communities are concerned about the construction and the potential flood risk impact to drinking water and threats to public lands that we have. Mr. Chairman, with your, I would ask for unanimous support to enter into the record the executive summary report by Dr. Mark Tompkins, released on March 10th, 2026, which analyzes the threat to human life, property, critical infrastructure by the proposed wall and buoy system to the Laredo and the communities along the Zapata area. I would ask for unanimous support.
Seeing no objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So a couple of things. One, I don't know if y'all have seen that report. I would ask if you can work with your partners, International Boundary Water Commission, the Army Corps, and get us a response to that. If you disagree that there is no threats to it, tell us why on that. And then the other thing I would ask, Mr. Scott, is what is the current operational justification for a border wall in Laredo and Zapata, even Big Bend also? When Congress can see, and when can we expect to see an updated border security improvement plan? As you know, and there are other times we used to go on what you all wanted. I would ask for that also. And then more importantly, would ask if you would commit working with myself. I know there's a gentleman, I think his name is Paul Enriquez. I don't know if I've met him before, but he's doing a lot of it. We just want some input with it. Like I said, last time I asked for certain exceptions, we got them under what I call Trump 1, and even SpaceX got an exception to that as also. So I just want to ask you if you can commit with us to sit down. And I know you're very hands-on, and I appreciate your relationship and Ron's relationship, and look forward working with the on those border wall, I won't call them exceptions, but concerns that we have.
Well, first and foremost, thank you for your willingness to communicate and work with us over the last, I don't know how many years. Those partnerships and those conversations have added a lot of value, and I'm fully committed to continuing that going forward. And we do work with the local communities. We look at the environment. We work with the agencies you just mentioned and even more. As a matter of fact, after this hearing later today, I'm flying down to the border to have some of these specific types of conversations, not in Laredo, but another specific border area. I'm firmly committed to making sure that we continue that going forward. I would be remiss, though, if I didn't highlight that border security is an enduring requirement. The illegal immigration ebbs and flows, but the foreign terrorist organizations just south of our border that are bringing threats into this country constantly use illegal immigration to create gaps to bring people into the United States. That border wall going back into the 90s, CBP, Border Patrol has worked on it, perfected it. That is critical because the reason the numbers have gone down now, a lot of it is policy. But we have almost 11,000 Department of War personnel on the border helping us create a level of deterrence, and that is not a sustainable model. The personnel salaries, that's the most expensive part of the border security. Building the border wall is actually an investment that saves American taxpayers money, but we're going to do it smartly, and I commit to having conversations with you and others on how we do that.
Thank you. By the way, where are the Border Patrol agents? Are they still doing interior enforcement? Because I've talked to a lot of them. They want to be Border Patrol, not interior. I would assume those folks are back at the border?
So border security, as you know, it's a team sport. We have to have consequences. You can't just let somebody run across the river and then get away. So we continue to work with ICE and our other partners, but those are targeted enforcement operations. The vast majority of CBP personnel or Border Patrol agents are actually on the border and or airports at ports of entry. But we still do support ICE operations in targeted manner.
Yes. And we'll talk about how many numbers are still away from the border at a later time. The other thing I have before I go to Mr. Lyons is the questions on checkpoints. I know, the checkpoint in Laredo, I know there's money there, and we're going to work on that. We did talk to your team. A couple of things I said, if they don't put enough commercial lanes there, that checkpoint would be the fourth largest port in the whole country. I know there's an expansion, there's money there. I want to work with you, but the only thing I ask, and you know this very well, you got to get the risk analysis, the equipment that are used at the ports of entry. Border Patrol has a different mindset, but the more we can do that, and we talk to your team, I would ask you to do that, because as we expand the World Trade Bridge from 8 lanes, commercial lanes, to 18 lanes, and Colombia from 8 to 16, we're the largest port of entry. 18,000 trailers. You can put all the trucks from El Paso down to Brownsville. They don't even match what they do in Laredo. We would ask you to just do this once in a generation checkpoint, and we'll follow up. I don't want to go. I just want to get your commitment that you'll work with us on that.
You have my commitment, sir.
All right. Thank you. And I'm glad you got Ron with you also. He's a good one, too. I like career people. Mr. Lyons, again, thank you for your men and women. I also don't believe in defunding ICE, but I think we need to have some reforms, and we talked about it yesterday. First of all, I want to thank you, Chairman. You and your staff and myself, we sat down with some of the ICE folks when we brought the South Texas builders, Mario Guerrero and the other folks that came in. We want to thank you because it looks like now, instead of focusing the work site right now in South Texas and other areas like Laredo, you're focusing on criminals and criminal elements. So I want to say that because that affected the housing situation in Laredo. So I want to start off with thank you so much. The other thing I want to bring up is what we talked about is, and I don't know what term to use. You don't like ICE warehouse.